he got here and it was a little bit like, oh, not sure exactly what to do with you, when I actually got to sit down and look at him and be like, wow, you're here.
How does the fantasy of becoming a parent compare to the reality?
Oh, that's a nice one. The first thing that comes to mind is that I didn't realise until I had a newborn that I'd never actually met a newborn before. So I guess when I'm thinking about being a parent, I was like, yeah, I can do this. I've got a house, I've got a job, I'm old enough. Not that there's a particular age, but, for me, I felt like, yeah, okay, I've had some life experience, I've gone to therapy, I've sorted out my stuff, and I'm ready to have a child. And I think he got here and it was a little bit like, oh, not sure exactly what to do with you. I know how to change a nappy, but I know how to hold the back of a head. But I didn't know about cluster feeding, and I think the stuff around the feeding was probably the biggest shock to the system, and the biggest reality check as well. And I think in the beginning everything was happening so fast. I think I said that before, like I was just running on adrenaline, but it meant that I didn't actually have time to be in the reality of what was happening. Even like after giving birth, it was kind of just like, he's here and now he needs to eat and he needs to be changed and he needs to eat again and he needs to be changed. And people talk about this overwhelming sense of like love that you feel and excitement, and I kind of, it's not that I didn't feel like I loved him. I definitely knew I loved him, but I didn't have any time to really sit and bask in that feeling. Not until he was a bit older, maybe a few weeks, even maybe about a month old, when I actually got to sit down and look at him and be like, wow, you're here. I have a newborn and this is happening. Because I think before then it was kind of just like all systems go, 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 go. You see people on TV, you don't really see them give birth, but you see them give birth, you see them with their babies, and the baby's usually actually a lot older than they actually are supposed to be, and so you don't realise just how floppy and tiny they really are. And even things like this, like I'm talking to you now and I'm noticing I'm talking at a lower decibel than I was talking before, and I'm very conscious that he's asleep and I want to keep him asleep because he hasn't slept for a few hours now. And being so responsible for somebody else's sleeping has been really interesting. I think I don't want to say negated, maybe I just assumed that when he was tired he would sleep, and it is not the case. He needs help to sleep. And for that, in terms of like reality and fantasy, my fantasy was that when he was tired he would fall asleep, but no, he needs help to be rocked and shushed and all of these things to go to sleep. And so that sleeping for me is a really precious time that I need to protect for him. So my favourite quote is that the furthest distance in the world is between how it was and how you thought it was going to be. And I think that sums up what this journey has been like. It has been as beautiful as I thought it was going to be, but with some really hard kind of bumps in the road. And I'm constantly reassessing, I would say. So, we sort of get on an even keel for a few days and then it's like, oh, okay, we have another developmental leap and now we've got to change. And I don't think my fantasy of being a mum accommodated for those either, like developmental leaps and how they were going to impact him. And I guess also, that you're going to be responsible for somebody and that person's going to be around you all the time. But it is different to actually have someone around you 24 hours a day. You can't just jump in the shower, or you can, but he is in his bouncer in the bathroom with me, so I can keep an eye on him. And especially, I think, because I'm breastfeeding, less people can help. And so I think in my head, all the practical stuff was ready, but I guess some more of the developmental stuff as a mother, I probably didn't consider as much. And so those have been they've been hard, but I've enjoyed them. Yeah.
And can I just ask, how do you think, or how did you imagine you to sort of be as a mum? Did you have any ideas of how you would take to motherhood?
Ooh, I think I said earlier, kind of just take everything on the chin, and I think I assumed I would, and I do think I have, and people have said to me sort of like, you're a natural, it kind of comes quite naturally to you. I think I've always been quite maternal to people in general, so I kind of just assumed it would follow in the same way. And you'd have to ask him because I'm not 100% sure, but I think I'm doing that, and I think it's working. Yeah.
So can we just go back to that, what you talked about the connection that you feel kind of, there's an assumption that there's going to be an instant connection and an instant bond. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, that really came from a conversation I was having with a lady that I met in the hospital the other day, and she asked if I felt like I instantly loved Micah when he was born. So we were talking the other day about whether it's different if you have a vaginal birth or if you have a C-section, and whether that changes the bond or the connection that you have. And I think for me personally, I definitely knew that I loved him. There wasn't a doubt in my mind about that, but I didn't necessarily have a minute to sit in that and feel it, or it wasn't as I imagined it would be. Like, people talk about this euphoric feeling, and I was, I guess, really swept up in everything that was going on. There were complications in my delivery anyway, so I had to manage those and deal with those, and then family in and out and visitors, and just there wasn't the time for it. But also, I don't know that it's always how people describe it either. Like, and I think maybe it's different depending on how you tend to love anyway in your relationships. Because I know I've spoken to others who tend to have quite, it might sound bad, but it's not, like a more detached way of loving. Like, you can love as an individual rather than being sort of wholly consumed by the person that you love. And I think speaking to different people, noticing how their first experiences with their child is different. I think we have that bond because obviously he and I have been together for 9 months before he was actually here. But when he arrived, I still didn't know him. I still had to bond with him and connect with him as who he was. And I think I said something similar to it earlier, I had the preconceptions of him and who he was in my tummy. But that bond, I feel, has had to grow and develop. And that love, and just like his love for me, and I can see his love for me and how that's grown and developed, my love for him has grown and developed. But I think sometimes it's like idealised. And I do think, especially from the conversation I was having with my friend, that you can be made to feel like, well, if you don't feel like that, then there's something wrong and you should be connecting with your baby in this way or that way. But I think everybody's process is different, and that's a really important thing to remember.